Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to welcome to the screen and the stage. But first, we'll start with the screen. We have Marie van der Heydt, the Senior Policy Program Officer of Music, coming to us from Berlin at the Senate Department for Culture and Europe. Big deal. Big deal. Hi, Marie.
Good evening. Hello
Hi.
from Berlin.
Great. Hello. Good evening. And we also have Paul Miller over here, also known as DJ Spooky, who is more than a DJ, also a composer, a writer. Oh, are we on echo a little bit? Oh. All right, I think it worked. So DJ Spooky, more than a DJ, is also a composer, a writer, a multimedia artist who uses his creative forms to bring awareness to social, cultural, and environmental issues and inspire people to do something about it. So thank you for joining us, both of you.
Hey, nice to meet everybody. Can you just do a thumbs up that you're making sure that you can hear the sound? Just making sure. Okay, cool. Okay.
Yes, it's working. Thank you. And then joining us in person, we have Ariel Palitz, who is the Senior Executive Director of New York's Office of Nightlife, which is part of the New York City Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. Oh, I'm still echoing.
Yeah.
All right, I think you fixed it. Thank you. I'll do that one a little bit again. Ariel Palitz, who is the Senior Executive Director of the Office of Nightlife in New York City, coming to us from the New York City Mayor's Office for Media and Entertainment. And you can come on up. Here she comes, coming on down the aisle. She has also owned and operated a venue before, which she might tell you about, and she still goes clubbing. So I think that's pretty cool for someone in like public office. We also have Lutz Leixenring, who is the spokesperson for the Berlin Clubcommission. Super cool. And also partner at Vibe Lab. And Lutz has been Lutz, you can come up as oh, is that right? You're right there. So it's just like an incredible advocate for creative culture and nightlife economies all over the world. And so it's super cool to have you here in New York City, as I know he goes everywhere. Is Tyler Myers here? Come on up, Tyler Myers. This guy is the executive director and co-founder of Knockdown Center, which recently hosted that incredible show. One of my favorite venues, actually. So great job. And Tyler's been creating, opening, and operating cultural spaces for decades in New York City and beyond. So super cool to have you here. Thank you. And one more, I'd like to welcome up Lauren Sullivan. Yes. Hey, welcome to the stage. And Lauren, also a woman founder and co-executive director of Reverb. Has anyone heard of Reverb before? Yep, we got some nods. Super cool. It is a not-for-profit dedicated to empowering individuals to take action and do something about our environment to make a better future for people and the planet. So super cool. I'm so excited to have you all here. Yes. I have like a quick fun question. I'll sit down. A fun question. We're going to do this in a past, present, future sort of setup, and we'll go around and, just be super organic about how we lead this conversation. But I did want to, close our eyes and flash back. We've all been in this industry for a bit, it sounds like, right? So I want to think about what we've seen, what we remember from the past that no longer exists in nightlife, right? Like in our nightlife careers. So for instance, people used to smoke cigarettes inside. We don't really do that anymore in New York City. So I would like to hear what do you remember that we don't do anymore?
Yeah, Reverb started out in 2004, and we would go to venues saying, hey, we'd love for recycling to be set up. We'd love to have space to set up our tents and banners and flags, to bring out local and national nonprofits, to talk with fans about environmental issues. And What doesn't happen anymore is that there's no grumbling, there's no pushback on those sorts of things, where initially we were just a thorn in their side and it was not one hand washing the other, kind of the artist activist person coming in with reverb behind them, helping support, and then the venue helping out too. The venues originally were really kind of against that sort of work. So we don't see that anymore, and it's really quite wonderful.
When I was in high school, we used to go on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. to the local record store and wait for the tickets to go on sale for that week. And we would all line up down the block and rush in and rush to the Ticketmaster terminal in the record store to buy tickets for any concert that went on sale that week. And it was only paper tickets. And I think saving paper stubs, I don't know, that's something that I always loved when I was a kid, and I sort of missed that part.
Yeah, but you know, a little more eco-friendly. We're not using paper for our tickets anymore. Go for it.
Well, smoking was the one I was going to say, but okay. I think another one is like the Village Voice we used to have, where we would pick up a paper on the corner every week. It was one on every corner in every store, and there were listings of every venue, DJ, live music, and oopsie. Thank you. And you basically would be able to see at a glance what's going on at all the venues throughout the week. And you could literally map it out. On Monday, I'm doing this. On Tuesday, I'm doing that. On Thursday, I'm doing this. And you were able to really learn about different venues that you didn't know about, or music you didn't know about, DJs, parties. Now you have to opt in and follow a venue, follow a DJ. So I don't think you really get that full exposure and that paper calendar, big world look at it.
Yeah, true. But again, we're not wasting paper anymore. So
right.
Plus and minuses. Then Lutz, any things from the past?
Well, I think my first parties I organized 1995 or 96, and I remember one November night it was snowing and really cold, and I had to walk up down in the city and put up posters, and it was the worst job ever. I was freezing. It was what is it, like sticky everywhere. It's like terrible. So I don't see so many posters anymore. There are still some, but not extensively as we used
everything
to.
has to do with paper, right? It's like flyering when we had to flyer, hand address every single invitation and stick on stamps to send them out. So
and I know
manual labor.
I know DJ Spooky's been in this for a minute, so I'd love to hear what you remember from back in the day that just no longer exists.
Yeah, first and foremost, it's a pleasure to see everybody. Ariel, John, Tyler, Lutz, everybody. It's a real pleasure to kind of see the evolution. First and foremost, this is a conversation we should be definitely having, because the world being what it is, the climate crisis has reached such a profound level this summer. I'm sure anybody in Europe, the droughts, the fires. My favorite thing, kind of resonant with some of the other speakers, is one time I took a studio to Antarctica, and I went to several of the main ice fields. And the idea was to make what I call acoustic portraits of ice. And so I carried a backpack and went to a whole bunch of different ice fields. And we had the party launch at Sundance, hosted with Robert Redford. And then a little bit later, we had Earth Day with me, the Flaming Lips, the Roots, and I was with the promoter, Peter Shapiro. And we were just kind of all backstage riffing about how, why couldn't we have the whole concert be powered with renewable energy? And I'm kind of like a big...
We're still good.
Fan of the early Jamaica. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Kingston. You go to a late night event, and you can smell the diesel fumes burning, but somebody's Nico, kind of thing. So right now we're at a crossroads where I think panels like this, the thing I don't miss is the cigarettes. Personally, I can't. If you ever go to Berlin, I mean that's one of the worst memories, or Moscow, or something like these kind of European countries where the cigarette culture was like awful. But it's now just everything is possible, and that's one of the things that I'm really intrigued with. In fact, one of my favorite projects, and I'll just kind of pass the mic back in a second, is there's a club in Rotterdam that had set up what they call the sustainable dance floor. And, it was just a very cool idea. It was just kind of a design group that was really interested in sort of just showing how the human body itself can generate electricity, which is what we do. So they made the entire club be able to be powered by everyone dancing on the dance floor and things like that. You know, we can have innovation. It's just we have to reimagine what's possible, and that's where I think panels like this are just really refreshing. So thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. Absolutely. And Marie, if you could please share with us a throwback memory.
Well, I will bring it to a government perspective because there has been so much has been said that was very interesting. But what I can say is that at least in Berlin, what is not happening anymore is that we don't see club culture as part of a funding system because for a few years now, club culture has become a part of the public funding system, which is really a success. So we see it as culture, as an important part of Berlin's culture, and that's why we also provide funding for clubs and for the club culture. That's new.
Which is super cool. Thank you for your work doing that. And I can't wait till New York City gets, a little inspiration from Berlin. And I wanted to use that sort of flashback example to help inspire all of us in understanding like things used to be different and change is not impossible. A lot of our examples came from policy changes, right? Like smoking inside. Hey, this is bad for us. Now let's not do it anymore. And then technology where it's like, hey, this is actually more convenient, cheaper, and yet somehow also better for the planet. Like it gives me hope to see that just in 20 years, there's been a large shift in how we party, and also why we party. And so to focus a little more on the sustainability and some of the innovations we've seen, let's start with our own cities or our own, sort of work lives. What have you seen in the last couple years that has really just blown your mind and gives you hope? Yeah. We could popcorn it too. Like people on site, we can popcorn. We don't have to go like all in order. And our friends on the screen, just raise your hand or chime in. It can be fluid.
I guess I will just go down the line. I will start. So Reverb started back in 2004, and we help musicians to green up their tours and make them more sustainable. And the thing that we do is actually embed a person on the tour to help them do that work. And so that's kind of one of those things that, one, we didn't necessarily think was possible. An artist said, we don't have a bus bunk. We don't know if we can do this. Too many hurdles, or we're too busy. And so the thing that we found is organizationally, if we can just kind of take the load, take that off of their plate and help them become more sustainable and do that work on tour. And so behind the scenes, what that means for us is, helping with composting, helping with recycling, sourcing local farm food for their catering and their touring crew, ditching disposable plastics and providing reusables for the band and, filtered water, all of that good stuff. And then in the front of house, what we do is bring together and kind of, what Eli had talked about, is really bringing together that community, because music has that unparalleled, ability to bring people together. It's this phenomenally powerful thing. And I think the relationship between artist and fan is really incredible. And so capitalizing on that so that people can take these messages of sustainability, of activism, sign up to volunteer with a local group in their community right on site at the show, sign up to vote, and take that home with them so that can ripple out into their community, to their home, to their school, to their work. It's been an incredible ride, and I think it's something that we didn't necessarily think was going to work well, but it really resonated with so many artists who are activists in their own right, and so we're grateful for that.
I have one quick thing.
Go ahead.
It used to be when I first got into doing concerts and venues and things like that, the amount of equipment you would need just to deliver power to the incandescent lights was about half the equipment that you needed. And so watching LED technology enter the theatrical fixture realm and reduce the amount of power. I mean, it used to be that we needed generators and the cable and the copper and a whole extra truck just to deliver the equipment that would distribute the power to each individual incandescent lamp. And these days, the cable is less. We don't need the generators. the amount of power that each theatrical light is using is a fraction of what we used to use, which is, I don't know, it just seems like a win-win-win all the way around. And watching that technology get deeper and deeper into the products that we use when we put on shows has been pretty spectacular.
I guess I would point to the examples around the plastic straw ban in New York, which I think if you spoke to a venue operator, like, it was just like, that can't happen. I can't do that. Like, and it just shows, like, first of all, that it's possible, that, you know, having this collective conscious within venues, that we can collectively do something as small as a straw to make such a huge impact. And then even plastic bags. I mean, New York is almost synonymous with the plastic bag. It says, "I love New York" on the plastic bag. They hang from every tree. And, you know, so I think pre-pandemic, we really were on a roll, you know, and moving in that direction of making that a priority, doing the small things that make big differences. And it's just, you know, really good to be able to pick up where we left off, in a sense.
I think we saw really amazing showcases before we started to talk here, and I think they show that this is something that is not depending on one sustainability manager that you have to hire. It's really a common effort. So you have to design instead of waiting for the disaster, and this can be done in a festival very good because it's a small city, basically. You know, so from the very first approach to the last, like, people taking their tents home and not let them, you know, dispose. These are things that I think you have to educate people. And I mean, there are good examples like Burning Man, Leave No Traces, you know, have like bringing it into the mindset of every person. And I think that's the power actually of nightlife and of creative communities, that we can, you know, inspire people. And the straw is a good symbol for it. You know, it's probably not saving the world, but it's like on the top of the pyramid, and everything below is as relevant to look into.
Yeah, absolutely. As someone who just got back from Burning Man, it is the least sustainable place in the world. I mean, and like, you know, of course, it's the mindfulness in the community is actually, we are having these conversations about how to be resource conscious, right? There is that part of Burning Man that is educational, where you're like, I can only bring so much water, I only have so much gasoline. So people are not just wasting as much, but what is more sustainable are what Eli was showing in the the closed loop sort of technospheres and biospheres, right? Where we're not just putting up a festival and then making it disappear. Like, what if a festival land existed and could sustain itself, right? And so there's a future in which that could happen too. So bring it to our friends on the screen.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? I keep thinking that'd be all right. So, yeah, I mean, you guys, it's very heartwarming to hear all this. And the problem with our time is consciousness. I mean, it's really, I would say most everyone in that room and most musicians as well generally want to see the right thing happen. The problem is we just have a legacy of the bad. You know, for example, California is facing a massive housing crisis, and homelessness is massive. But there's zillions of empty buildings. I'm just going to use it as a funny example, if slightly twisted. But they could easily solve the homeless problem by changing the building code, because most of the buildings are set up for what you call single family dwelling code. New York, for example, air conditioning, people put on air conditioning at the slightest drop of a hat in the summer. But if you have a heat pump, or if you have other things that are just as practical and are just more efficient, they can interface with older buildings and you use less energy. Your average stadium concert, I was reading a really interesting article in The Economist the other day. The National Geographic and The Economist teamed up to show how much carbon your average concert generates. Your average concert generates something like between 500 to 1,000 tons of carbon dioxide for maybe a 15,000 person concert. So imagine that every day, all the time. And then on top of that, say, for example, you know, concert venues that still require paper tickets, for example, like 15,000 pieces of paper that somebody's just going to throw on the ground. Combine that with like plastic and other stuff that you would normally find after your show. People, even the most conscious musicians or people who are deeply invested in environmental activism, their audiences and them, whether you're a thought leader or someone who's just in the audience, half the battle is just raising awareness. And I think, what gives me hope, Kay, to go to your question, by the way, I used to DJ Burning Man a lot. In fact, online, there's a real fun dialogue I have with Larry Harvey, the founder of Burning Man, about the economics of Burning Man. And we did it with The Economist magazine a while ago before he passed away. And me and him were just fascinated with the economics of free. Like why, how do we think about, in an era of late capitalism, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than to imagine the end of capitalism. So getting people to rethink their relationship to the carbon or fossil economy is just the beginning. But it's also like stuff like even saying your carbon footprint, like you as an individual do not produce as much as a major corporation, or, cows farting on a farm that generates a massive amount of methane. Or you can even look at the Ukraine war, for example, where the Russians are burning their oil and gas rather than send it to Europe. There's these huge clouds of, you can see from satellite images where the Russians are burning the oil rather than send it. And so thus oil prices have gone through the roof. And same time, they're just burning it. You can see these massive clouds of pollution. So, I'm sorry to paint such a bleak picture, but it's also panels like this that at least give me a little bit of hope. This summer was really a powerful indictment, not only from showing how everything is connected, but here in the US, we've been facing a sort of the right wing has sort of really struggled to kind of figure out messaging to give people a more bleak picture while they just burn everything. It's a strange moment because you feel like women's rights, for example, the Roe v. Wade being rolled back versus, for example, the various senators from the right that tried to block Biden's Build Back Better bill because it had a lot of initiatives for solar energy. These are all things that are just, I feel like people like Ariel or Kay, I'd love to see you guys run for mayor. So let's, it's always a good time to start this now. So just put that out there. So it's really putting me in a good mood to hear this, by the way. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe I can add to this. We had a very early stage of the Club Commission. I think 2007 or 2008. We got a funding from the Berlin Senate, but also from the EU for consult clubs about sustainability, how to save energy and so forth. And in that time, nobody really was talking about that issue seriously. But for us, what is a really good topic to actually consult clubs, to actually go there, have a look, talk to them about any matters, and how to save energy was important one of them. And it started with putting time clocks at every refrigerator, because you don't use them 2/3 of the week, and then you save a lot of money. And maybe you can also join a program that was also available in that time, where you can change your light system to LED lighting, and you get funding for it. So there was basically consulting how you kind of make your business more efficient and also save money. And I think that's the first step. Look, that's where you get a lot of those creatives. How can you save money? Because that is always like a very, nobody really has a lot of money to spend, and that's really a first good step. And I think the second one is to bring everyone on board. It is something that is a common effort, and to educate people in the team, to educate your audiences, and then step by step, there will be a shift of the mindset. And I have been to a club in the US, not in New York, but I was really shocked that everybody was walking around with a plastic cup that was disposed. Like 2022, yeah. That cannot happen, And I don't know if the calculation was being done, if this is cheaper than giving out glass bottles or glass, but I think in a lot of cases, I think the calculation was not being done. You can save money.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's interesting in that saving money is the thing that gets more people on board. Just like, DJ Spooky was talking about how do we make this so adaptable and adoptable where everybody wants to do it? And guess what? We are living under capitalism. So saving money is a really great incentive, right? And so there's this funny thing, and as a club owner, and we transferred to those unbreakable plastic cups. Those are expensive. They're like $10 a cup. like $7 to $10 a cup. And then you got to wash them. So you got to hire the dishwasher. You got to buy the dishwasher. If you are running a long-term operation, it does work out to be cheaper in the long run. If you're doing a pop-up event, people just think like, I'm just going to get a plastic disposable cup, right? And so it is a sort of thing of like, ooh, could we have pop-up? Does anyone know Cup Zero? Right? Yeah, Cup Zero. Awesome organization that has these cups. They do pop-up events. They charge you charge your customer $1 with your drink, right? Your drink's $10. Guess what? It's suddenly 11, and you get your $1 back when you bring your cup back. You basically just bought a $1 cup. It's incredible. So there are these fun solutions, right? That the more we all adopt them and talk about them on these panels, the more that whatever this club in somewhere in America can ideally, if they can't afford the really fancy cups and the dishwasher and all that, maybe they could partner with something like Cup Zero. It was actually in Berlin or outside Berlin at Garbage Festival that I first saw a festival that was using cups that had value to them. As soon as you assign money and value, they don't end up in the trash because you're just throwing away money. And so it's interesting having this conversation tie back to the pure economics of our operations. And I'm curious, Marie, who works in, really working in the levels of government and our social ties, right, with the State Department. So, do you also witness this, and as you are creating programs and events with your artists?
What do you mean? What do I experience?
Oh, like as far as the ties between the incentives between the economic incentives and the being more green and sustainable. Is that inspiring in the work that you do?
I mean, I was like preparing for this panel. I was really like thinking about what sustainability means for our cultural funding programs, and I was not thinking so much about ecological sustainability. I was thinking more about social sustainability. And the biggest problem we have at the moment in Berlin is the problem of space. We don't the spaces, they get displaced. They are driven out of the city. It's something that you in New York know pretty well because you had the same development only a few decades before Berlin. And for some reason, Berlin didn't really learn from other cities. And we are now in a situation that we call a crisis because there's a lot of investment coming into the city, and a lot of clubs have existential fear of not being able to stay in their spaces. So when we think of funding nightlife and funding clubs in Berlin, because I mean, I have to say that club culture as a genre in our cultural funding is pretty new, as I was saying before. And the first steps we're taking now together with Clubcommission as a partner, for example, is we're trying to develop spaces. We're trying to protect spaces. Most of the time, we as the Senate, we are not the most powerful when it comes to private investments. Most of the time, we're the last ones who notice, and then everything's too late. But we try to be speak with, get into dialogue, be very open, and communicate with people to see how we can kind of save this environment of freedom that was around in Berlin for many decades. And I think what is at the moment most important for us is to find solution for to have a sustainable spatial infrastructure in Berlin. That is what came to my mind when I was thinking about sustainability. So maybe Lutz can say something more about ecological sustainability, because the Clubcommission is doing a lot of great work in that field.
Yeah, just very short. The Berlin Senate, for the audience, the Berlin Senate has, of course, different departments, and it's talking for the cultural department. And while you have 17 sustainable development goals, the economy department is more focusing on the ecological topics. So how can you reduce CO2, and how can you be more efficient with waste and everything. And the culture is more about the topics of equality and community building and so forth. So maybe that's why. But there are programs, and I think incentivizing. Maybe Ariel can also say something because you do also great work here. I think incentivizing in these fields are very important because just pointing people on existing programs is already helping because you cannot see every program that's out there. And I think bringing a bit light to the dark is also the role of the Clubcommission and the mayor's office.
Thank you, Lutz. Well, I mean, I think one thing I've learned as a former club owner and now within the mayor's administration is that there are so many like existing resources and programs and departments and innovations that exist that are funded within an administration that people don't really know about or are aware of. I think that's part of our job as the Office of Nightlife is being that bridge to existing resources and information. And if it's not nightlife related, to make it nightlife related and to put those like nightlife goggles on it. And so, you know, we have a new administration now with the Adams administration, and he's created, I mean, I had to write them down because they're so new. You know, the NYC Accelerator program, it's providing resources and training and one-on-one expert advice to help building owners to be more sustainable and to know what the resources are. And then Green NYC is a new initiative as well that works with New Yorkers to reduce waste and emissions and so forth. And so it really is up to us within our office really to create that bridge and make it useful, make it a two-way street to be useful resources. But I think, you know, as far as incentives are concerned, I mean, we've all just been through like total hell together. And I think we've reemerged, you know, raising the bar, raising our own awareness and consciousness about how we all want to rebuild. And I think that we have a lot of incentive for ourselves to make sure our businesses are more sustainable, to continue and to be able to weather a storm like this, and to take this opportunity to use this collective consciousness, collective experience to build back better. Like, I know it's a very like overused political phrase, but I think part of the global nighttime governance movement, you know, 60 offices of nightlife around the world, it's really also about harnessing that collective consciousness and motivation and incentive we all have. We're better people now, I think, because of what we've been through, the pain we've been through, and not wanting to repeat past mistakes and wanting to do better. And there are so many companies like Cup Zero. There are delivery companies that, you know, with all these like DoorDash and so forth, where you can order only from places that have reusable containers. I think the incentive is there for these small emerging businesses to realize that there is interest, there is money, there is business in doing better. And I think this is the trend. And we all have to buy those products and use those resources, and make that, we all have to have that higher standard within our own businesses and our own lives and make those choices. And then there will be more choices. But I do think it's part of this collective consciousness of post-pandemic world.
Absolutely. And I'd say there's also the, what Reverb we were speaking on earlier is that sort of that fandom, that obsession. If you're obsessed with an artist, right, you are suddenly super green and really inspired to do your best. Just like you were saying, just that collective consciousness can actually, we need to get everybody involved, and the arts, especially DJs, are a great way to do that. So I was hoping you could speak a little on just like, how do you convert? How does Reverb help convert people from, I guess what do you call it? Kind of somewhere between lackadaisical, lazy, uninterested in green into like, wow, like I'm going to sign up, I'm going to plant trees, I'm going to reuse my bottles.
Yeah, I mean, I think the beauty of, what we all do in this industry is like incredibly sexy, especially externally. So like capitalizing on that lens and the kind of desire to be connected to the arts, to music, to that community, to the artist. And so for us, we work with Billie Eilish, for instance. So when we tour with her, we help her navigate having a vegan option at concessions that has price parity with meat products at concessions. And so that's a mandate. And so when we're talking to fans in the show, we say, hey, Billie's a vegan. Tonight, we want to ask you to take a pledge, a 30-day pledge to, go vegan, go vegetarian, kind of decrease your footprint. And one of the biggest individual choices you can make. And because Billie's doing it, and because we can point to the concessions option, it's an immediate win-win. It's the most compelling thing. And so it really is that, I truly think there is no other relationship like artist and fan. Like they're the soundtrack to our lives, they're soundtrack to our joy, our grief, everything, community building. And so if we can capitalize on that and then that magic that happens when we all come together through Nightlife and through the club scene, it's really unparalleled. Yeah.
I'm curious for you, Paul, because you definitely have fans, and I'm curious in how you've been able to use your art to inspire cultural change.
Okay, I'm muting you guys because I think there was an echo, so sorry about that. Okay, by the way, House of Yes has been a thought leader, and seeing you and Ariel on the same stage is awesome. And Reverb, I'm just beginning to be more familiar with. I'm kind of an indie avant-garde artist. You don't need to be mainstream. I know people like Moby, I know people all sorts of different areas. But the interesting thing right now is like, how do we think about, making the future a different place? And the eerie thing, my motto these days is the future isn't what it used to be. So how do we, when I hear so many of the inspiring stories we've all been hearing today, the issue for me is like people have one foot in this idea of convenience, where they're just kind of on autopilot, and that convenience is like, I'm going to go get a soda when I get a meal, or I'm going to do this, or you're going to have beef, or you're going to do this, or whatever. And all of those, next thing you know, the consumer is kind of blamed for these behaviors. So, for example, even the term carbon footprint, which I always chuckle about, was coined by British Petroleum, BP, to get consumers to take the blame, I'm using air quotes here, for these massive carbon, kind of issues. But the same thing is going on with the industrialized Western nations making the less industrialized countries, which have far more populations, but far less industrial, carbon emissions. So those who have burned and done the least are getting hit the hardest. Look at Pakistan, look at Nigeria, look at the growth of the Saharan desert. Those are all massive, so big that people just can't even process how, like the flooding in Pakistan, like I think 1/3 of the country's under the water. And then countries like Bangladesh, which is where a lot of our fast fashion comes from, the dyes, and they put in the rivers. So your Levi's jeans or your, Levi's actually has been doing a lot of stuff about sustainability. But I also look at companies like Patagonia and their philosophy of recycling and renewing. And there's plenty of room for innovation right now, which is great. If you have a smart and interesting idea, this is the best time in the ecosystem to kind of move forward on that. And plus with the startup culture, one of my favorite success examples, I do want to paint the audience that there's a lot of innovation and there's a lot of people beginning to be able to both show that you can do good by doing well. So companies like Tom's, for example, or Parlay for the Ocean, which teamed up with Adidas, and they've been doing a lot of really interesting stuff with reclaiming ocean plastic for clothing. There's also clothing that generates its own electricity, so you don't need to have so many lithium batteries. There's a small design group out of MIT that's been doing that. So these are all really interesting stuff. And then meanwhile, you have obviously the Elon Musk's and Tesla Motors, which I personally have mixed feelings about, because even if you have a sustainable car, the batteries, for example, are being mined in the Congo, and they're using child labor and wiping out indigenous cultures. And then on the other end of the spectrum, the grid itself is still, being powered by diesel and so on and coal. So these are all things that I think the arts can really help people reframe the questions and reframe how we move into those frames. Because right now, the legacy of the 20th century is just going to be, personally, I wonder if our species would even make it out of this century because of the sheer volume of depredations and extinctions going on around. But on a more beautiful note, there's like very lyrical approaches, like Burning Man, for example, which Kay, you brought up. I think right now, I really think we should have an all hands on deck approach. And there's sometimes this litmus test of purity where people, oh, you're not green enough, or you're not trying to do this, or you should be all over here. There's so many approaches that I think that we as individuals can use, that artists can help amplify. Like one of my all-time favorite examples is the Billion Oysters Project, where the Hudson was super polluted, and they used the natural systems, what you call biomimicry and bioremediation, where they reseeded a lot of the Hudson with oysters. Not only did the oysters pull and extract a tremendous amount of pollution out of the soil, but then they realized there's all these cascading benefits. Same with I can give you example after example where they do kind of remediation, like mushrooms. If you plant mushrooms on a hazardous site, the mushrooms generally tend to pull out a lot of the toxins and poisons. So there's plenty of really interesting approaches, and that's just from nature. But even human behaviors where we're kind of amplifying the good rather than getting caught up in the purity litmus test kind of things. Anyway, that's just my kind of opinion. By the way, I'm at Yale right now, and I'm artist in residence at Yale, and we're doing actually a series of projects around this innovation and design and with an eco-activist approach. So I want to give a shout out to Yale's, it's called Eco 360, which is the climate school here at Yale. Regretfully, I do have to go, and I mentioned that in advance, so I'm not pulling out of my hat here. But you guys, I just want to say it's an absolute pleasure. Kay, Ariel, I'm glad you guys are in New York. You guys should take over New York. And I'll hopefully see you guys live in the future, but I kind of got to run because there's people waiting for me here. So are we all good? I'm just going to say thank you for having me. And it's a wonderful panel.
You're the best, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right, you guys, got to go. Bye.
Now, Lauren, you were eyeballing me. Do you want this?
To riff off of what he was saying and just using kind of the club connection, Forest Hill Stadium, Reverb partners with them, and they do a ton of great work. One example is just ditching disposables behind the scenes, offering up reusable water bottles to artists and crew when they come to the stadium, and also offering that up to the fans and free filtered water if they choose it. And then we've also taken a portion of the proceeds from those customized reusable water bottles that are coolly branded and donated to the Billion Oyster Project. And so it's building bridges to community, activism, fans, community, all of that good stuff. So there's so many ideas and ways to do those kind of bridge building exercises around sustainability and community and activism that, it's happening right here in our backyard.
Amazing. That's actually my next question. And Lutz, you kind of touched on this a little bit, which is, I think we all did actually, is that it is a group effort and it is the entire ecosystem of nightlife has to be involved in this. And so I am curious, and also Tyler, you're going to kick this one off, is what do we need from venues and what do venues need from audiences as far as how we, the bringing your own bottle is exactly that, and it's like, but therefore the venue has to allow that water bottle in through security. I mean, how many times does security say you can't have outside drinks? Even if it's an empty water bottle, they don't let you in with it sometimes. So there's that sort of two double-edged sort of truth to it. So if you could touch on venues and audiences and what we need to do.
We would let you in with your water bottle.
Awesome.
And I'm a big fan of always building in all of our bathrooms. We put drinking fountains very much on purpose because even if you didn't come with a bottle, but you want to keep the bottle that you bought from us, you can absolutely refill it in any of our bathrooms. Yeah. I think that there's different contexts in which the struggle is different.
Yeah.
And I think for my venue, so for those that don't know, Knockdown Center is in Maspeth, Queens. We have a capacity of 3,000 inside. We also have an exterior venue that's 1,600 people, and we have a techno club in the basement called Basement. And so it's possible when we're really cooking on a Saturday that we go through something like 5,000 or 6,000 cups in about 3 hours. So for me, when we've looked at Cup Zero, we've looked at heavy the $10 cups. It's not a practical option for us. Just in terms of being able to store, warehouse, and distribute that many cups that quickly on a 3-acre lot with that many people in the building. So what we can do is we can use single use, but we can use compostable single use. And then we can do something else like we started with when Frank Ocean did the nights in the basement, we would do the heavy, chunky $10 cups in that context because we're talking about 300 or 400 people. And so we're in a situation where we have to make the best decision that we can make depending on the day that we're operating. And so I guess what would I want? I would want from our customers to know that, I don't know, everybody in nightlife I think is coming from a place where they're aware of the planet. They're aware of so many issues that we face in nightlife, making sure that we're protecting the people that are coming to have their experience with us. Make sure that we're protecting our employees. On a night at Knockdown, we might have 90 people working, and that's from production, doing dangerous work, security doing sometimes dangerous work, barbacks doing really fucking hard work, you know, and so we're trying to take care of everybody, and we're always trying to do our best. So it may be that you come to Knockdown Center and you feel like you have a single-use cup in your hand and it's awful. But we've really struggled with these decisions. We've really struggled to develop a compostable supply chain in order to have a cup where we can still have this experience and do our best for the earth at the same time. So I think that's what I would want is ideas, but also the generosity of knowing that in every case we're doing our best.
I mean, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that too, because that makes perfect sense of like the truths of it. Also that there's no one size fits all solution. Every venue is its own little snowflake. And so it is, you know, it is, yeah, let's go ahead and, you know about this, running like variety of stakeholders.
I think that we need to be better in good supply and good offers. I think there are smart solutions out there, but they are not really good or well implemented. You're talking about these cups. I think that could be much better rolled out, better organized. There could be like meetings about this. Let's do this in our city like this. And, you know, there must be more activism from the nightlife side to save money, but to also create change. And then I think there needs to be a lot of education on the customer side. And I don't really understand why also in Berlin, you go to public parks in the summertime and it's waste all over. And I don't understand why we don't start also the effort to really, when people go to parks, give them plastic bags, they have a nice day, please make sure everything is in the bag. And, you know, it is a lot of effort, but I think if we implement this kind of social pressure or social agreement, I think we will be better. And I wonder why we are only like policing, but not really like proactively informing people. And festivals and clubs can do this because it's a clear audience. It's like people arrive, you can tell them something, you can put it on your website, you can show videos on social media. So there are different ways of addressing this to your audiences. But you have to have the system in place first, and then you can roll it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think nightlife venues and nightlife industry are in a very unique position to make a very big impact in the world and community, much like artists do on their fans and vice versa. We saw with the repeal of the cabaret law, that was a grassroots effort. That came from the bottom up. That came out of demand. And I think we also, you know, from this office's perspective, look to the innovation of the industry, like what you do at House of Yes, what you do at Knockdown Center, to see the choices you are all making that are realistic for you. Like you said, like we could say everybody should have this. And I think we have to be careful, especially from a policy standpoint. We don't want to add more mandates, more fines, more summonses, more offenses that create more of a financial burden. This has to come from, in a sense, from within, the desire from the community, from the industry to do better because it's the right thing to do. and then to demand it of their venues, of the city. But nightlife venues and listen, just your one venue, thousands and thousands and thousands of people in just one night. You know, I mean, that's a lot of influence. That's a lot of power to make change in people's daily lives. Like, well, if no one else is using a plastic straw, I'm not going to either. And now, like, if you use a plastic straw, someone looks at you like you're smoking.
It's like day class. It's
You know
very,
what I mean?
it's not chic. It's kind of
It's not cool.
It's not cool.
It's not cool. So I think really it does come down to, you know, changing that consciousness from within, using these massive platforms and access to people to change hearts and minds and behaviors. And I do think it is happening organically. Like we're just sort of getting started again. You know, we're just allowed to hang out together again. We still have a mask mandate, you know, like at least in certain places. No, no, not officially. But I think we're just, even this conversation here today demonstrates where the priorities are.
Yeah.
You know, and we do have the power to make those changes. And these are arenas where people are listening and are willing to do it. We just have to your point, have strategy, have planning, make it possible, make it realistic, make it affordable, make it incentivized, make it mutually beneficial. But if everyone has the same goal, I think we can get there.
Absolutely. And I want to kind of bring in Marie to this too, because you hit the nail on the head on the importance of the work Marie is doing by continuing the sustainability, by sustaining the population of clubs and cultural spaces, is sustaining the advocacy that that group has. If all of a sudden it gets scooped up into these international startups end up taking over all the spaces and all the square meters, then all of a sudden that voice went from level 10 volume to level 4 volume. And then those actions and the activism just won't be as strong. And so I really, if you have anything to say on that and how the power of the people that you advocate for, are actually a part of the formula. Oh, we can't hear you.
I just realized, sorry. I think without them, we couldn't do much. That's why we really rely on partners like the Clubcommission in Berlin as well, because it's also a lot about like translating, because people who work in the administration, I mean, it changes now because more and more people are interested in working for a public or a government body. But there are still a lot of people who they don't speak the same language. Like if you have people working in the government talking to people from the nightlife economy or from club culture, it happens quite often that they don't really understand what they are talking about. So you need a community, you need stakeholders, you need participation. Otherwise, you create funding mechanisms, you create structures that are not really useful. And then you spend a lot of money on things that are not sustainable in the end because, they are not hitting the nail on the head. So what I think is without a strong, and that is something that only developed over I would say the last 5 to 10 years, maybe 5, a lot of participation in cultural policy or policy in general, politics in general. A lot of cooperation. I think without that, we wouldn't be where we are now in Berlin. It's still very difficult, but it's a way forward.
Amazing. Thank you for that. I'm feeling like the vibe in the room is that we're going to wrap up soon. I'm just sensing that. I did want to do just like a quick, fun, hyper unreal, I guess could be realistic, but a very hyper inspired, anything is possible sort of thought before we open to questions, which is, like if we were going to super tech, super idea, one solution that we're going to put all of our money behind for in this context of sustainable nightlife, what would it be? And Mine would be I'm just gonna take the self-powered dance floor and make that into like a self-powered, super contained, closed circuit system of energy that just, everything from the lights and the music and the food is actually going into the garden. And then there's parties in the garden because the compost is super dope. And it's like, that's my idea. It's a closed circuit ecosystem contained in one nightclub experience.
To build off of that, I would go with with solar battery powered generators, which they're happening. Yeah. They're happening, which is really exciting. So getting rid of the diesel generators, shore power from green power, all those sorts of fun things.
Then you can party anywhere.
I don't know. I'm gonna second yours. Let's find that. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely second yours. I think, as we're raising the bar in general, that we are taking all of the injustices and inequities and inaccessibilities into consideration, making just places safer, healthier, more fair, more equitable, and just having a more evolved community and culture that takes the right and the wrong into consideration about everything. And so for me, that would be a real utopia to really be able to have like justice at the core of all the decision making. And that plays into sustainability, accessibility, fairness, equity, safety, happiness for all.
I think I was a bit thinking with some friends from the technology side, what part can cultural spaces actually play in this whole transition? And the cultural spaces are usually in city center, and many of them have a lot of space in the basement or on the roof or on the parking lots, and since we are transitioning our energy, we also need to have storage. We need batteries. And I think we could make cultural spaces system relevant if we use them as storage spaces also, where you have batteries in place, where you can also load your cars and basically have cultural spaces also as energy providers and suppliers. I think that could be a vision that I would like to support.
And then they won't get kicked out by their landlords. That's good.
Make them system relevant.
Yes.
If they're not already.
Yes. All right, Marie, you're next.
It's very late here in Berlin, so I'm not so creative anymore, but I would probably go with something like a new law where for every new building that is built in Berlin and New York, they have to provide, the building owners, they have to provide space for culture in general when they want to build something new. When they want to build their luxury apartments, there has to be culture somewhere as well.
Love that. I second that. I like that idea. All right. Thank you all.